So, ladies and gentlemen, the old saying goes, a smart man learns from his mistakes, but a wise man learns from the mistakes of others. And I'm hoping this offseason, in order to get out of this cycle, the Ravens can not only learn from their own mistakes, but learn from the mistakes of teams like the Buffalo Bills, who are in similar situations. So before we go any further, make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe button. So to get right into it, more or less 48 hours ago, the Buffalo Bills imploded. It's a pretty fascinating spectacle to see. They had 5 turnovers. I mean, they had legitimately had, five, four or five fumbles and 2 interceptions across the entire team. One fumble, I believe, was from James Cook, but 3 of those fumbles were from Josh Allen, and obviously the 2 picks were from Josh Allen. And it, of course, was definitely fascinating to see the contradiction, the hypocrisy in the media when it comes to covering these things compared to how they would cover it with Lamar Jackson. You've seen that there was a stark difference in how they covered Josh Allen. In the case of Josh Allen, like always, they look for every excuse under the sun. It was obviously an interception. They're trying their hardest to say it wasn't. They're saying that somehow the ref screwed them out of this, screwed them out of that. When in reality, that team sold every opportunity they had to win throughout that game. At least 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 opportunities to put that game away, and they didn't do it, which is fine. But again, you're seeing the hypocrisy in the coverage, and I like Josh Allen a lot. I think he's an excellent quarterback, but what I don't like is it's very obvious that a lot of people, especially the media, but even in the general public, a lot of people, they use Josh Allen as a proxy to attack Lamar Jackson. Because if they want you to believe that Lamar Jackson is the only quarterback in NFL history to turn the ball over in the playoffs, which obviously is not true. Now, one of the reasons they love using Josh Allen as that proxy is because it helps them try to push this lie that Josh Allen has been safe with the football in the postseason, which is not true. The fact of the matter is Josh Allen has had 15 fumbles in his career in the playoffs, which is the most by any quarterback in that time. Josh Allen has had a bunch of turnover-worthy plays in the playoffs throughout his career. The bigger story to me is the fact that it's low-key been a miracle that despite Josh Allen having so many turnovers in the regular season throughout his career, that he has had some of the greatest luck in the postseason when it comes to turnovers that the NFL has ever seen. Because in reality, he should have 10 to 15 more interceptions in his career, but they got dropped. There was a bunch of fumbles that somehow bounced back to Buffalo. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But there is something wrong with people in the media wanting to hide that information just so they can try to hype up Josh Allen in the name of tearing down Lamar Jackson. So again, one of the other things that you see is the Bills fans, they poke their chest out, and I'm gonna talk about this cycle in a second. I just want to tie in the conversation about the Buffalo Bills before we start talking about the cycle that both of these teams are stuck in. But as far as the Buffalo Bills, the fans every single year, they poke their chest out and they always say that they have the best offensive line, which to their credit, they do have a top 5 offensive line. They talk about how they have the best running back in football in James Cook, and to their credit, James Cook is a top 5 running back. When you actually look at who has had the most rushing yards over the past 2 years, who has had the most scrimmage yards over the past 2 years, which running backs have had like the most touchdowns over the past 2 years, James Cook is top 5 in most of those categories. He's even top 2 or top 3 in some of those categories, but overall he's been top 5 in most of those categories. So yes, he is the top 5 running back. They also talk about how they have one of the best pass defenses in football, which is true. They have all of these things, right? Whenever it's time for them to brag, that's the first thing they say. But then when these collapses happen, they immediately complain and say that Josh Allen does not have any help. Which it's laughable just because it seems like they really can't make up their mind. But we're not gonna sit here all day and worry about if they can't make up their mind or not. Because look, in reality, the team is solid, but it's just a solid team, but nothing spectacular. But definitely better than some people would want you to believe, because you have a lot of idiots that want to convince you that Josh has nothing at all, and they want to convince you that James Cook is not a top 5 running back. But these dumbasses don't actually watch any of these games, so what they think and what they say shouldn't really matter. But as far as the cycle that we and the Bills are stuck in, unfortunately, we are stuck in a cycle where we're good enough not to be good enough. And it's understandable if you're stuck in that cycle with the mediocre quarterback like Derek Carr or Kirk Cousins or Tua Tagovailoa. If you're stuck in a cycle with those kind of guys, it's more understandable. I mean, it sucks for the fans of those teams, of course, but it's more understandable how you could end up there. But to be in that cycle with a future Hall of Fame quarterback like Lamar or Josh Allen, it's a massive indictment on the coaching staff and the entire front office, the GM, everybody. It's a massive indictment. And it's just a shame, because I'm hoping that the Ravens can break this cycle. And I think they have a chance to, if they actually get their head out of the sand and recognize that they're in a cycle in the first place. Because when you look at some of the issues that both of these teams have, one thing that you'll notice is both of these teams are lacking high-end talent at the wide receiver position. And notice I said high-end talent. This is not me trying to disrespect Zay Flowers or Khalil Shakir. Both of them have been really good at what they do, but in my opinion, neither one of them are true number ones. And in reality, I'm hoping the Ravens could add a true number one to that mix that could pair alongside Zay Flowers. I think that would be exciting. Also, when you look at both of these teams, you're seeing a defense that has a lot of older players who don't really make that much of a difference when it matters most. And this especially applies to the Ravens. At least the Bills, sometimes they force turnovers. Not even sometimes, a lot of times they force turnovers despite having a older defense. Whereas in the case of the Ravens, I mean, how many times do we have to point it out that these players on this defense, they literally don't force turnovers in the playoffs. In any big moment, they're just completely useless. And also, another thing that these two teams have in common is that they both have a very overrated, or had, past tense, they had two very overrated head coaches and GMs that were able to get away with doing a bad job just because their star QB could bail them out. And this especially applies in the case of the Ravens, because every year in the draft nerds say that Eric DeCosta had the greatest draft of all time, but yet every year you look up, we still have the same exact holes on this roster. Still no pass rush, still no consistent answers when it comes to pass catchers. Like, it's not an ideal situation. But another thing that you will see, well, actually, this is actually not a similarity that the Bills and the Ravens have, but the main difference though, is that the Ravens have a lot of overrated players who are able to be given a lot of accolades simply because they're tied to Lamar Jackson. That's all it boils down to. Anybody who thinks differently, they're either not paying attention or they're just not Ravens fans, so they don't even realize. But in reality, there's a lot of players, especially on this defense, who they have been sneaking into that Pro Bowl and All-Pro conversation, and they haven't actually been that good. But they're teammates with Lamar Jackson. So when you're teammates with Lamar, you get a lot of primetime games. Also, Lamar carries us and makes us win a bunch of games in the regular season. And so by default, when it's time to vote for these things, the people that are able to vote, they usually just vote for the guys that are on the teams that are doing the best. They're not really watching these games. And this is how a lot of players who aren't that good on the Ravens keep sneaking in to the Pro Bowl and the All-Pro conversation, when in reality, if you watch the game, they are clearly not that good. But still, nonetheless, despite those guys being not that good, or despite all the flaws with the roster, we aren't that far away from breaking out of this cycle. Because in the end, when it comes to this cycle, we made one major step towards breaking out of this cycle. We fired John Harbaugh. So that's out the way. Now it's just a matter of, hey, can we find the right coach? And at this point, I think it should only boil down to like three people, whether it's Brian Flores, Clint Kubiak, or Robert Saleh. I'm not saying I would necessarily be mad if they got the guy from the Rams, but in general, I would prefer one of those three. But if we bring in the right coach, and then from there, if we actually go into the offseason and for once fix the obvious holes that have been on this team for the past decade plus when it comes to the O-line, the receiving room, and also the pass rush, we can break this cycle. Because in reality, this cycle is not a cycle that we've been in because, oh, we just have bad luck. Because there's a lot of teams that they unfortunately they've had a lot of bad luck when it comes to trying to fix this. They've been trying really hard to do whatever it takes to fix it, and they just have bad luck. Our issue isn't luck. Our issue is that you have a bunch of people in the front office who are stubborn and they have big egos. So they just are refusing to fix something that could have been fixed in one or two off seasons. But they've allowed it to decay over time. And now you're in a position to where, because you were stubborn, not only do you have those same holes from before, but now you have a bunch of older players, which now creates even more holes on a roster that realistically you can't fix all of these holes in one offseason. But hopefully they fix enough to where we can break this cycle. But let me know, do you think that we will break out of this cycle